All right, everybody, welcome in. It's the Week 8 recap for the Steak Dinner Bowl. We had a couple of close matchups this week. We have a new high score of the week to talk about. And the NFL trade deadline has come and gone. We can see what that means for a couple of the key players that got moved. And with that, let's get into the league news. This week started on Thursday Night Football with Brady playing Lamar Jackson. Brady getting 325 yards, TD, but losing to Baltimore, which at the end of the game kind of seemed like they were going to come back and win, but didn't. This week we also had Russell Wilson doing laps on the plane headed to England, and he did look like the old Russell Wilson. Maybe those knee highs on the plane helped. He had a late game drive for a touchdown, and then they had an interception to seal it. And the NFL's trade deadline came and went this week. Some notable moves where TJ Hawkins went to the Vikings, a nice tight end. We had Claypool go to the Bears, which is crazy. Good for the Bears, I guess. Bradley Chubb and Jeff Wilson both went to the Dolphins. So it looks like the Patriots are going to have even more to deal with in the AFC East. And the other notable trade was Nyheim Hines went from the Colts to the Bills, which is even worse for the Patriots in the East. Kind of seems unfair now that the Bills are stacked, and now they're even more stacked. This week we also had Jared Allen get into the Minnesota Ring of Fame, which is pretty wild. He comes out on a horse. I'm going to show a video of it now, and then after that I'm going to get into the matchups.
What a grand entrance for Jared Allen, who goes into the Viking Ring of Honor. His 22 sacks in 2011, a Viking record, raised on a horse ranch and celebrating today.
What a crazy entrance to a Ring of Honor for him. I was looking up some of his stats, which is crazy. I mean, defensive player, I don't talk about him too much in fantasy, but he played from 2004 to 2015, played in almost every single game every year. It was crazy. He had 136 sacks over his career. Just an amazing career. Also, I'm going to put at the end of this, they had like a video before he rode out, which is awesome. It's a little longer. I'm going to put it at the end if anybody wants to watch it. It's pretty cool. So let's get into the matchups. We got first matchup. We got me in first at 6-1 versus Zach in sixth place at 3-4. We had Stafford versus Burrow. I ended up having to pick up Stafford because Mahomes was on bye. He ended up getting about 30 points, which is decent for a pickup, weekly spot. I had Pollard on my bench with 39.2 points. I'm not even sure why I did that, to be honest with you. But luckily it worked out for me that it didn't cost me. Zach had ETN on his bench, who had got 29.7 points. It ended up being a close matchup. Only about 10 points. Had a Monday night sweat with Burrow, who didn't do much on Monday night. So it worked out good for me. The next matchup we had was Mark in 7th at 2-5 versus Anne Marie in 9th at 2-5. And they had the Thursday night battle. They had Brady versus Jackson. And they both ended up with about 39 points. They had the closest matchup of the week with only about 3 points separating them. And this matchup really could have gone either way if either one of them had played different players. And we had a couple of wide receivers that outscored on our team, but that's the way it goes. The next matchup we had was Corey in 8th at 2-5 versus Ryan in 3rd at 4-3. We had Tua versus Josh Allen. Corey actually had 5 players go before the 1 o'clock games, meaning the Thursday night game and the Sunday morning England game. But Ryan had a couple guys go off. He had Henry, who had 41 points, 219 rushing yards, and 2 rushing TDs, which was crazy. A.J. Brown with 22.6 points against Houston. And he also had New England's defense went up scoring 21 points. Corey did have the highest player of the week with Tua, who had 55.68. But Ryan continuing just to steamroll. Alright, the next matchup we had was Mike in 5th place at 4-3, and Jen, who's in 2nd place at 6-1. We had Rogers versus Kyler Murray in this battle. Murray had 53 points. Real nice week from him. Jen also has Chase. Jamar Chase is out with a hip fracture and torn labrum. He's not on the IR, on the NFL IR, so they think he should be back within 4 to 6 weeks. You can put him in the fantasy IR, and then you can put in players that are on the IR or players that are out onto the IR. So you can do that and pick up another player. Mike did have the lowest score of the week, and for some reason his team was in bye week hell, even though there are only 2 teams that were even on bye this week. So it was a little strange. And just, Mike back on his shitty Mike bullshit. Lastly, we got the Battle of South America. We got Bolivia versus Colombia, which neither one of these countries will be represented in Qatar for the World Cup this year. We got Carlos in 10th place at 2-5, and Omar in 4th place at 4-3. We had Cousins versus Hurts. Carlos has 4 quarterbacks on his team, so it's always interesting to see which quarterback he's going to play that week. Carlos probably would have had to play 2 more quarterbacks this week to win because he lost by 98.48 points. Biggest blowout of the week. And we also have a new weekly high score with Omar getting 237.96 points, beating out Ryan's week 5 score of 226.66, which is kind of funny. It's 666. I don't know how I didn't notice that back in week 5, but and his name is a Reaper, so it's kind of funny. Ryan did get knocked off of that, but he is actually in the lead for the season high score. And with that, let's take a look at the standings. This week is kind of funny because from last week to this week, literally the standings are exactly the same. Even though we had some people lose games, win games, standings exactly the same. And we'll take a quick look at what we got going on next week. The matchups, we got me versus Shitty Mike. Hopefully he stays shitty. We got Corey versus Mark in 8-7 battle. We got Ryan versus Zach, 3-6 battle. We got a 10 versus 2 with Carlos versus Jen. And we got Anne Marie versus Omar, 9 versus 4 battle. And let's see what we got for teams on bye. Cleveland, Dallas, Denver, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and the Giants. So Mike's probably really in trouble this week. The league pick'em. Yep, crushed it this week. That's it for week 8 in the books. And if you want to check out the Jared Allen video from start to finish, it's pretty cool. Check it out.
Jared Allen, Cowboy Jose.